Hey everyone, I'm here with my friend Marygoza. She tutors on her own for bar exam prep, and I'm just going to let her explain how she got into this whole thing and why she's still doing this after all this time.
Well, thank you very much, Jules. I really appreciate this opportunity to say a few things and spread some information out there that might help others. I was with Barbri for 23 years and started out as in California, worked my way up to where I ended up to be vice president of the western 30 states in the country, doing everything, sales, marketing, but I did content. I taught essay workshops and wrote essay materials, wrote outlines, helped edit materials, everything that had to do with content for the states I was running, and in addition to helping create the study syllabus and study, what it would take to pass the exam. So after leaving Barbri then, I kind of fell into tutoring. Someone heard that, I was available, and I said, oh, well, okay, because it's what I've done, but not one-on-one so much. And it's just been become now more of my passion in life. I've always enjoyed the teaching component, but I especially enjoy the challenge of helping people navigate then what they need that bar review doesn't provide. I think that that's what's really become apparent, and since I know from that end of it, why the courses are what they are, but how sometimes, though they say they're customized, they're really not, and it's not a one-size-fits-all process, and that becomes really frustrating when you work so hard to get through law school, and then you hit the bar, and suddenly what worked before doesn't work, and you don't know why. And sometimes it does for friends, and sometimes not for you, and there's not a lot of feedback and insight. And so I really come to love helping figure that out for each student. It is different sometimes, but there's some common experiences and common mistakes that I've encountered, and what I really appreciate about this opportunity is to maybe reach out to those that have not passed the bar exam on their first attempt or multiple attempts to try and let you know and let them know, what does that mean, and what should you change? How should you approach the process, if differently, if at all? So the first point is that passing the bar exam is not about intelligence. It's not about ability. It doesn't send a message if you don't pass that you're not cut out for this. So get rid of that altogether, because that's really not what this is about. The bar exam is unique and not like law school, and so there's certain expectations that the examiners have, and it's about meeting those expectations. And for some students, it's not knowing what those expectations are. It's simply about not recognizing what is a passing essay, how do I produce what they're after, and will it take to get there. But for most people, they're like, no, I know what it takes, and I tried, but I'm not getting there, and what's going on. So it's really a function of stamina and focus. This is what the bar exam is measuring, is your ability to have grit and determination and not give up.
And this is something that I'd like to ask off the bat.
Yeah.
So how many people have you worked with who have been repeat takers and who haven't, been able to pass the first time or the second time or the third time? And just what have you seen has helped them the most?
Yeah, the typical student that I tutor has failed multiple times. That's really become my specialty because it takes a while for them to say, I've tried this, tried that, tried the other, and someone's like, have you tried a tutor? So it might be their third, fourth, fifth, eighth time. And it is usually about the difference in what I provide, and what makes a difference for a student in that situation is simply getting good feedback on what they're doing. And so I analyze the bar exam itself for them. But it is about shaping, getting good feedback on their writing, and getting into their head as they're trying to answer a multiple choice question and go, what are you seeing? What are you thinking? Why did you do that? or as they're trying to memorize and study, there's so much law, right? You make more and more notes and more outlines and flashcards, and you're super thorough and compulsive, and I stop that process. It's about condensing. It's about, you can't memorize what you don't understand, so that's the first goal, is to make sure you can explain it to me, to a 1L, in plain English. Can you really explain that concept? That's that. You can't memorize something you don't get. But then it's about organization. And I know that memorization isn't taught in law school, and it's not taught in bar review, and yet ultimately that's really a critical #1 goal with bars. You got to learn the law and you have to memorize it. So often there's no organized way to memorize material, so I help with that, with approaches, with trying to condense it down. How do you see the big picture so that you can actually then continue to memorize it? So it's just manipulating what they've already been working on, but shifting focus a little bit to help understand, again, what the graders are looking for, how to produce it, what to worry about, what not to worry about, what to memorize, what not to memorize. You know, where are the priorities within all those materials so that it becomes manageable. And that's really, I think, what is the key to a lot of the repeat takers. It's just about somebody finally giving them some insight into helping personalize the process so that they don't get sidetracked and don't focus on what's not important and know how to produce passing exams.
Mm-hmm. So. And who are some of the people that you've tutored through those difficult times?
Well, on my mind today is because I got an email today from a student who got her results yesterday, and she was taking the bar exam. She took the bar exam for the 4th time and did really well in law school. Was working for the DA and managed to stay employed without being passing the bar, because they felt she was so capable and strong, and she was just at her wit's end. And she was taking the uniform bar exam. She needed a 270, and she'd gotten as close as getting a 266. And today she reported to me that after working with me, her results, she got a 296. So she just crushed it. Yeah, she just went way beyond, and so it was so exciting for me. You know, that's the reward that I get, is those emails, those responses. So yeah, I mean, so many students work full time. So I deal with that a lot, because that's like, you know, okay, your first time you don't pass, and now you have to work. So it becomes even more challenging. So I have a lot of people that work full time, and there's just, so many students, different situations. Mm-hmm. I work with students who have learning disabilities, and, you know, they're very embarrassed and shy, and it's like, look, we all have something, right? It's just, so working with them, but this is a good day to hear back from, but I have 100% pass rate with most states. I think, yeah.
So how about Illinois? There are a lot of friends in Illinois.
I know. I haven't tutored specifically for Illinois, but like I had a North Carolina student who I tutored for the first time for North Carolina, and he passed after failing New York several times. He switched to North Carolina and he passed. He was working full time. So it's often not specifically about so I know the MBE, I know the MEE, I know the MPT really, really well. What I don't know as much about are the Illinois essays, but I do know, especially from Barbri being headquartered there forever and seeing the materials, seeing their Essay Advantage program and that they had and their answers, I'm familiar with it. But it's about core principles and good writing. So that's what I learned. I passed 8 bar exams, and I didn't switch my writing style. I may had to emphasize certain issues for certain states, but it's about strong, organized writing and managing your time on the test. So the goals that really, you know, other than memorizing the law, which stands out as a critical goal, the other goal is managing your time, like now through bar prep and on the exam itself. I learned that could destroy your results, regardless of how smart and how well memorized you were. You have to work with the timing of it. So things like that, it doesn't matter so much. I do tutor for bar exams across this country, and because it is about core skills like that. And I think ultimately, though, the hardest part of the bar is the goal that you have to manage your energy and your emotions. Ultimately, it comes down a lot of test taking anxiety, right? That's a big one. That's a big one. I had it. It doesn't mean you're not going to pass or that you can't pass. It means that, it really is the hardest thing. But knowing you have the power to choose how you react. You can't control what they're going to test and what's going to happen in the exam room, but your reaction to it, understanding the power that you have to control it is essential. One of the bar exams I took, I wasn't prepared for. Something happened. I had a week off to study, and during that week, something happened in my personal life that was like, okay, I can't go, I can't study, and now I can't take the bar, but I was in charge. I was director, newly appointed, and I had to wait a year to take it at that point in that state. So I didn't know what to do, and I walked in, and I was just scared to death. But people recognized me and started coming up to me, hey, I was wondering about that question, and what was the law, and let me tell you about the course, and let me ask you this and ask you that. Suddenly, I had to look and be nice. I had to smile and be calm and confident and polite, and I was just dying inside. I was scared to death. So what happened is I became that. I was forced to chill out and look the part of a relaxed, confident test taker, because I was recognized and they were coming to me, and my breaks weren't studying the law now. It was talking with students, and I was really starting to, panic inside, but I couldn't panic on the outside. And what happened is I became that. I couldn't believe it. I actually, because I had to look a part, I became the part, and I did pass that exam. And I found that relaxation really allowed me and allowed my brain to just go, okay, what do you have to do? Go do it. And I wasn't as involved with myself and my emotions. And that was one of the best things in life that I've learned, that I value that experience. And that's what I think I want to send a message is, like, you're not a slave to your emotions. They don't control you. You can control them. And you can take a test and have nervousness, but still succeed and let it work for you. Adrenaline is a really powerful thing that actually allows your brain to retrieve information you never thought you learned. So you have to get out of your own way. Just go in and let everything happen that needs to happen without talking yourself out of it. That is really, really powerful. And I think that's what I try and instill. That email from that student today is that she said I gave her the confidence that she could do it. And that's really, really important. And I think that's the hardest part, but the most important goal, because if you're not really up on the law like everyone, or maybe your time is off a little bit, it's having that ability to stick with it, persist, have grit, don't give up, and fake it till you make it. That power over your emotions, that can help everything else. I mean, you've seen reality shows, right? I kind of like to watch them.
Yeah.
And it's not that, right? It's not the person who has all the credentials and went to cooking school or has the fashion institute. Everyone comes in with different backgrounds, and yet that artificial setting with, it's a competition and it's being judged like the bar exam, and it's timed, and it has the same, conditions. And who often is the one that succeeds? It's this scrappy, flexible, oh no, somebody sabotaged it. I ran out my material, got dyed or ripped.
Analogy.
Right? It's a make it work moment. This is who succeeds. You just take those conditions and say, I'm not giving up. And it doesn't mean disaster. Oh, my laptop froze. I have a migraine. I have food poisoning. It's just some stuff happens. And you can't prevent it, but it's your reaction to it. And so, yes, it is the reality show lesson of, guess what can really make a difference? The easy stuff. I mean, it's hard to do, but it's not the law. It's not how well you know easements and covenants, right? It's your reaction to when you see that. What are you going to do with it? Don't panic. Go for it. Never give up. Because I think what's critical to know is this is a scaled exam nationwide. We have a standard and an expectation the graders may want. And if they don't get it, guess what? You don't have to meet that expectation. It's about what everyone else in the room is doing. So it's about smart exam strategy. That's what I try and instill in students that I tutor. It's like, okay, how are you going to make sure that how you study is going to get you through? You don't want to be that antelope at the back of the pack that the lion's got its eyes on, right? Just stick in the pack. Perfection? No, you don't need it. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to do average compared to everyone else in the room. So in that moment, when there's that horrible essay or the weird MBE question, everyone else has it too, and it may not make a bit of difference. It's all relative. It's all about the group that you take it with. And so we're so hard and judgy on ourselves. You got to forgive yourself and recognize it's a scaled exam. It only matters what everyone else is doing, and you don't know what they're doing. So you might, beat yourself up unnecessarily. And so that's really what I want to prevent, and encourage people to recognize is it's doable. It just takes a little bit of a different approach. And I think for those that may not have passed, what are they going to do now? I think the critical thing, whether it's through a tutor or an academic support department or a bar review, is to get feedback on the exam that you took. It's the starting point is learning from your mistakes. How do you know how to fix them if you don't know what they are? And then once you learn what they are, then you need some feedback as to, okay, how can I remedy them? Again, may not have to be putting out money to hire a tutor. Hit up the bar review people. They may not offer it because they can't do it for everybody, but there's a service that's been paid for. Schools help too, and then obviously, there are tutors out there. But the goal is to figure out, okay, here's what I did. Now I know that. How can I fix it? And that's really, I think, important.
And it's so true. It's like what you were saying before we started the call. It's really hard for us to self-diagnose our own problems. And I personally can relate to what you were saying about the perfection element, because you and I have talked, and I was just way too thorough. I was so obsessed with organization that I wasn't actually learning the substance and giving myself that time to really do the work that needed to be done. And once I kind of had that light bulb moment for myself, it was just, all right, it's go time. I structured my time and I got it done. And that is really what helped me.
Good. Yeah, that's exactly right. Again, was it because you're not smart enough because you didn't have the ability? No, you just needed some shifting, some shaping, some focus, help. That's so that's so good, because that you recognize that and had that experience too, because you understand and can tell your friends too that, it's not about who you are and what you're capable of. That's not why you don't pass a bar exam. There's a lot of reasons why, but it's not then a crazy mountain to climb to pass either. Sometimes it is about, oh, you know what? Let me stop doing that. Let me stop making note after note. The flashcard syndrome, where everything is organized in detail, but you're making a mountain out of a molehill when you should be making a molehill out of a mountain. I mean, it is an inverted pyramid process. You have a lot of information and you should be condensing it down. And most people do the opposite. And then at the end of bar review, they have even more than what they started with. And they're like, oh no, how does anyone do this? So it is just little things. Because law school, we had one subject at a time in our exams, and we could focus everything on that. And often it was super long essays or different types of multiple choice. It really wasn't something that set us up to know what to do on the bar. So, there's a lot to learn about how to study that we don't really realize we need until, we get in this situation.
So true. And so what are some of the things that you think are important for test takers to do and what's not important for them to do, especially repeat takers?
Yeah, I think that so as far as being exam ready, you want to study the test as much as you study the law. And by that, I mean take lots and lots of practice tests. And don't worry so much about, well, I'm not ready because I haven't memorized yet. That's often a problem that occurs, is there's a focus on my first goal is memorizing the law, and I'm not there yet, so I haven't reached everything else, which is let me, do practice bar exams or practice tests. From the get-go, closed book, timed condition tests, because you need to know the scope of what you memorize. And it's the test that determines that. I mean, contracts is contracts. The contracts I had in law school, I used on all 8 bar exams and I could use today. So what did I do differently for each bar? I first and foremost looked at their essays, because the MBE was the same, but for essays I saw, oh, in this state, their contracts exams are all remedies. Somebody else tested breach and modification. Someone else went from soup to nuts, and I had to write really fast and do everything from is there a valid contract to what's the remedy. So you see, that shaped what I studied and how I studied and how often I did essays and how fast I had to write. So if you take exams under time conditions early and often, you will also learn how quickly to read, how quickly you have to write, how quickly you have to bubble in the answer without being a clock watcher. You want to be a smart test taker, so it's a lot of law, but it's a lot of test taking. So study the test as much as you study the law, so that part of it is not new. And then you also then know what to memorize because you've seen a lot of test questions. That's what I do for a lot of students, is like, hey, don't worry about that. That issue's been tested once in 12 years. Let's worry about this one, which for some reason they love to test and know that, even though your law school professor never taught it to you, you need it for this bar. So that is, it comes from simply taking a lot of tests, and you can do it right away. So I wouldn't shy away from test taking. I would also so memorization is a process, right? So you have to know what to memorize, which is determined by taking a lot of tests and knowing the rules of the road. But I would not cut corners either. No gambling. I think being a well-rounded test taker is important. And so if maybe you de-emphasize something before and it caught you, you want to, that's the edge of scaling, and falling at the higher end of the scale is just taking that little bit of extra time to study all of the subjects and not cutting any corners. Because I know in Illinois it's happened that, they've never tested it in 20 years and it showed up on the exam. I remember that year. So you never want to find yourself in that position. But as far as when to memorize, I think that's a big question. And it's a process that starts early on. So it's about repetition. And so you don't memorize as you go. But what you're doing is laying the foundation through lots of repetition, and then really the how do I memorize? I think that's what a lot of people don't know how to do. And so for retakers, I think if you have a problem memorizing, because what I often see is I learn by writing. So I write and write and write the rules and rewrite them and write outlines and write. There's no time. And so some people don't pass the bar because they run out of time. Like I got halfway through doing my process. So you have to give up your process. So often for repeaters, it's about, again, you learn from your mistakes and need to know what changes to make. Sometimes you have to let go of that long-held process that worked for you in law school and realize, hey, it isn't working for me. So even though it makes me more comfortable to write out a rule 10 times as a way to memorize it, you don't have time to do that. So memorization, as far as how to do it, is really to get involved with as many senses as possible. So you see it, you say it. Instead of writing it out, verbalizing it is much more quick. And if you can say it the same way over and over and over again, that has the same result as writing it out, because then you can write it if you can say it consistently the same way. So there's some tips about memorization, I think, that that might help someone retaking it, or at least to recognize that if they didn't do something before, to make a change, to not be afraid to do that. And so So I would work on getting feedback. I would work on finding out what it will take to meet those deficits that were identified. You know, how do you avoid those mistakes? Learn and focus more on memorization, which ultimately then is a process of, like I said, understanding the law and then organizing it. So make sure you understand it, then make sure it's organized. And by organization, often it's just knowing where things fit, the big picture. So you often, you know, I use, I try and find a place on Google Maps and it takes you into this real narrow spot on the map. And I'm like, where am I? Right? That's like the law. Like you're in some nuance. You really have to be able to go, I know where I am. And so when you zoom out, you're like, oh, okay, there's the main road that I'm coming, you know, in from, or there's the highway. Now I see it. Now you can go back and zoom in and know what the heck all that is. So that's the same idea. You have to understand the big picture so that you know how to get where you're headed and how to zoom in. And it really is not knowing these pocket areas and neighborhoods. You really have to know how and where, as if you had to teach the course. Where would you begin? Do you begin with subject matter jurisdiction? What is that? Power of the court over the subject matter. What does it consist of? You know, you have to be able to flow like that in your understanding, so that when you see an essay and it's about power of the court, you go, oh, let's start with subject matter jurisdiction. Let me look for it. Is it there? No. What about personal jurisdiction? You know, you've got to be able to issue spot. And that is a function of organization, which is a function essential for memorization. So there's a lot of law that you may really know really well, but it's not organized. And so I think that sometimes is something to think about as a repeat taker. Do you have that structure? It's sometimes you have to make your own approach. Not all bar review companies provide something for you, but a table of contents is a good place to start. Comparing that to lecture notes, where do they start? Did they start with subject matter jurisdiction? Matching and seeing that. That's the kind of thing that I think is helpful for students to do after they've learned a subject, but they're not grasping it, to kind of take a step back, zoom out, see what's going on, and then recognize, okay, I've got 8 pocket areas. Real property consists of, you know, or torts, or civ-pro flows, that kind of thing, I think is a nice thing to focus on if you're retaking the exam and it hasn't worked for you. So to make sure you have that as part of your study.
I love what you were talking about with condensing things down instead of making more work for yourself, because that is definitely what I was doing. And I know that that's kind of like the impulse to create more work for yourself often. So I really love that you brought that up. One big thing that I'd like to touch on before we close out is, so when a student comes to you and asks you for help, how do you start the process with helping them learn how to, you know, bridge these deficits to even identify them in the first place?
Yeah.
What is your process?
I begin with an analysis of their most recent bar exam. So I can tell a lot by looking at their writing and then looking at their scores. So I do a score evaluation comparing the MBE score to the essay scores. Some states don't release individual essay scores, some do. But looking at if there's a disconnect between the multiple choice score and how they did on essays testing those same subjects. I also interview the student, ask some questions to see how they were feeling during the exam, to know whether there was a disconnect about, did you know at the time that you weren't doing well? How did you feel? There's a mindfulness aspect of this that I want to zero in on to make sure that, that I know to what extent they know when things are going wrong. And how did they feel the best that they could remember about this, exam, that part of it, the MBE. So I look at, I do a careful analysis of the exam and look at missed issues, timing, substance, every component of essay writing, the organization, formatting, and then a careful interview, really, to get the information about how one memorizes, when when did that start? How best one learns. That's, some remember what they see, some remember what they hear, what they, what bar review materials they have, what bar review company they're using. I'm familiar with more than one. I do currently work as a bar review lecturer and contract editor for another bar review company. So I know all the materials and I know their limitations too. So I want to make sure that with each student, that whatever it is they're doing, whatever time they have available, then I work on a study plan and figure out what subjects are strong for them or weak for them and what process of it that they need the most help with. And then it's all customized. So whether it be multi-state performance test, MBE, or essay writing, we make it through and figure out what needs to work on when. And grading is included as part of it. That's, I think, the most important part, like I say, is getting feedback. So you want to make sure you get feedback all the way through.
That is very solid. Thank you so much for sharing your process and just touching on some of these minefields that people who are taking these tests again are going to experience. So is there anything else you want to say before you close out? Why have you been in this game, after all this time?
Yeah, it is truly, I love what I do, and I took those bar exams involuntarily for the most part. So I struggled through having to be this repeat bar taker and it didn't matter if I passed I passed them all in my first attempt, but the fact that I had to redo it and give up so much and sacrifice so much, but I was working and I was stressed, that takes a toll on someone. And I feel like I want to get value from that. I want to really be able to say, hey, I did all that. Why did I do all that? And this is what's so great about it, is I can really identify with everybody because of what emotional cost it really takes on you. I want to try and relieve some of that. Let me take some of your stress. Let me help lock in and give you some oomph. I want everyone to not beat themselves up and be so despondent about it because they don't need to be, and I want to help. And because I went through all that, I just want it to work for someone else because it was a lot to go through. So I just have a lot of empathy, and I love this stuff. I'm a total geek for bar review, so I love it. And yeah, that's why I do it. So I'm happy to help. So yeah, if anyone wants me to help, I'm here.
Yeah, you are literally the perfect person and the perfect job for you. And I love that I got to meet you and experience that firsthand. So thank you so much for everything that you've done for me and all the advice that you've imparted on everyone who's listening. And I hope that everyone who's watching or listening, feel free to reach out to me, and I will get you Mary's contact information. Actually, why don't you put out there what your own contact information is? Yeah,
the best way to reach me is by email, and if you want a phone call, of course, I can send me your number and I'll call. But it is easy. It is my name, marygoza, marygoza @gmail.com. And that's it. So yeah, and I, even if you don't know which way to turn, I'm happy to give advice if someone's like, do I need a tutor, or should I retake the bar review course again? Should I, what should I do? I'm happy to help out. So, it's, like I say, it's what I love to do. So absolutely.
Yeah. And that's what I absolutely loved about you too, is that I didn't even know if I wanted to switch tutors or look for a tutor or, all that stuff. And you just were willing to give your time to me. And you got nothing out of it except for helping me. So I have a very certain loyalty to you because of that. And you're just such a good person. And I am really thankful that you were able to run into all these students that you have who ultimately passed.
Yeah, I love it. Law schools hire me to tutor for them. Students hire me directly to tutor for them. I have all kinds, and now it has grown from Hawaii to this last bar. It was Hawaii all the way to New Jersey or Connecticut. Wow. Yeah. Everything in between. I love it. So yeah, Illinois. Whomever else is, I'm happy to help. So absolutely.
All right.
Thanks, Jules.
Thank you so much.
Okay. All right.